today's class, we will be discussing about the plague which struck Hanoi and the rat hunt due to the plague. In the last video, we had discussed about the resistance of the Vietnamese students and teachers against French education. Let us take a look at the topics that we will be discussing in today's class. How did the design of the modern city lead to the bubonic plague? How did the rat hunt turn out to be disadvantageous for the French? How did the rat menace mark the limits of the French power? Well, the French didn't limit their control to just making changes in education, military, economy and culture. They also wanted to change the way the Vietnamese lived. In the process of modernizing Vietnam, the French decided to rebuild Hanoi. So Hanoi is the capital of Vietnam, and as the French had acquired Vietnam, they decided to reside in its capital. Now Hanoi was divided into two parts, one where the French lived and old quarters where the Vietnamese lived. The French part of Hanoi was built as a beautiful and clean city with wide avenues and a well laid out sewer system in an attempt to make it a new and modern city. The part where the natives resided was not provided with any such facilities. Now these sewers, even though they were laid out with an architectural plan, were not very good choice, and the waste from the old city drained straight out into the river or during heavy rains or floods overflowed into the streets. The city was created to promote health and hygiene, but this is what became the cause of the plague. Let us know the series of events that led to the bubonic plague in Hanoi. In 1903, the modern part of Hanoi was struck by bubonic plague. As we have discussed above, Hanoi had a well-laid sewer system. These large sewers in the modern part of the city were a symbol of modernity, but they were also an ideal and protected breeding grounds for the rats. These sewers were connected to all the houses in the city and hence served as a great transport system for the rats, allowing them to move around the city. Through these sewage pipes, the rats began to enter the homes of the French. Once the French government realized that rats were creating havoc in the city, they initiated a rat hunt in 1902. Now the French hired the Vietnamese workers to catch rats, and they were paid for each rat which was caught. The Vietnamese saw this as an opportunity for gaining money, as they learned an early lesson in the success of collective bargaining. They realized that if they came together and negotiated with the French government, they could get a higher bounty for the rats. The government paid them when a tail was shown as proof. So the rat catchers discovered innovative ways to profit more. They started just clipping the tails of the rats and releasing them so that the process could be repeated. Some even started raising their rats to earn a bounty. So when the French government realized that this was turning into a resistance movement, they were forced to scrap the bounty program, which eventually led to the bubonic plague. This rat menace marked the limits of the French power and the contradictions in their civilizing mission. And the actions of the rat catchers tell us of the numerous small ways in which colonialism was fought in everyday life. So this was all about the plague that struck Hanoi and how the rat hunt which followed the plague led to a resistance movement against the French. Now let us take a short recap of today. The French government wanted to modernize Vietnam. So the next thing which they did was rebuild Hanoi. Hanoi was divided into two parts. One was for the French, which included wide avenues and a well-laid sewer system, whereas the natives were not provided with any such facilities. These sewage pipes were built for the beautification, but they served as a breeding ground for rats and also as a great medium of transport for rats to the French homes. To solve this problem, the French started the rat hunt, where Vietnamese were hired to catch rats and they were paid for each rat they caught. The Vietnamese saw this as an opportunity for gaining money, as they learned an early lesson in the success of collective bargaining. This rat menace marked the limits of the French power and the contradictions in their civilizing mission.